Nobody has more respect for women than I do. Nobody.
Hillary Clinton wants to abolish it, believe me. She wants to abolish our Second Amendment.
I think they didn't deny it. I don't think anybody denied it.
Other presidents did not call. They'd write letters, and some presidents didn't do anything.
Many people have come out and said I'm right.
You really do have to ask yourself, where does it stop?
Hello and welcome to Fallacious Trump, the podcast where we use the insane ramblings of Typhoid Donald to explain logical fallacies. I'm your host, Jim.
And I'm your other host, Mark. A logical fallacy is an error in reasoning that results in bad or invalid arguments. The logical fallacy we're looking at this week is contextomy, also known as quote mining. And I guess that contextomy is like taking the context out of something, like you take your appendix out of something.
Like an appendectomy or a eniectomy, basically. So it is taking it out of context. Quote mining is another common term for it, where basically you just look through large amounts of text for just the right bit of text that shows what you want it to show rather than what the person might have actually been saying.
Right.
And obviously things can be taken out of context and still mean the same as the person intended. Therefore, that isn't really a fallacy. It's a fallacy when someone is using it to kind of pretend that someone said something they didn't say or meant something they didn't mean.
In support of the point that you're making.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So it can be used alongside arguments from authority, saying, look, this person says, which sometimes happens, especially with kind of the creationist versus evolution argument. There's a kind of famous Darwin quote that's taken out of context about the eye being irreducibly complex, basically. And they've just ignored the fact that Darwin was saying, well, that's how it seems, but here's the science.
So that's just a little bit in the middle. Yeah. You see, he said that, but he went on to say, but if you evolved it over hundreds of millions of years, then it might happen. Yeah.
So our first Trump example is from a tweet that Trump sent after a terror attack in London, where he said, at least 7 dead and 48 wounded in terror attack, and the Mayor of London says there is no reason to be alarmed. And no reason to be alarmed is in quotes. And for some reason, Trump has had a bit of a feud with Sadiq Khan, the mayor at the time.
Thinking because he would take him out of context and then blame him for not doing a good job and all that kind of stuff.
I think Khan said some negative things about Trump when he came to the UK, I think was one kind of the genesis.
Yeah, because he kind of went, I don't want you in my town. Get out, you idiot, you loser, you killer, you
Pretty
liar. Not unreasonable things to say.
Yeah, so for some reason Trump thought this was a good thing to tweet about Sadiq Khan, but of course that no reason to be alarmed is taken out of context. He did say that, and it was in an interview that he was doing about the terror attacks. But what he said was this.
Londoners will see an increased police presence today and over the course of the next few days. No reason to be alarmed.
So he's saying there's going to be more police around because there's just been a terror attack. Don't worry about the fact that there's lots of police around.
Which is exactly what you would want your mayor to do.
Absolutely.
Is, increase the police presence in response to terrorist attack, in case there's any more, in order to protect the citizens of the city. So don't be alarmed if you see more policemen. Yeah.
Once all of the media said, no, that's not what he said, here's what he actually said, Trump accused them of desperately scrabbling to kind of, make it seem like he was talking sense and stuff like that. But obviously, by putting it into context.
For finding the beginning of the sentence in a desperate scrabble to just find where that quote came from. It's not particularly desperate, because you just go, well, just switch the TV on and watch all of it rather than just pick the second bit. God, yeah.
And I mean, we talk sometimes, and we probably haven't done for a few episodes, about how to counter this. And the easy counter for this really is to say, you've taken me out of context.
Yeah.
Here's what I actually said.
Yeah.
And the thing is, some people will try to say, you've taken me out of context. Trump does this sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, for example, when Biden said that he talked about injecting bleach And he said I was being sarcastic, which he was not being sarcastic. No. But sometimes in that kind of instance, he'll say, "Oh, I didn't say that," or "I said, that was out of context." And the White House has claimed he has been taken out of context in that instance when people complained that he had suggested people inject bleach.
Yeah, but he said it in the context of, in the presence of, and in the room about the medical responses.
Well, we all saw him do it.
Yeah, and it wasn't like you kind of go, well, what context could you possibly have been saying it in such that was sarcastic?
Yeah. So the counter to the counter, if someone claims that they were taken out of context, the counter to that is to say, okay, well, tell me what context you used it in. And if they can't do that in a way that makes it sound not as bad as it was initially, then they probably weren't taken out of context.
Out of context. Or if they can show you the video without having doctored it via deep fake technology in order to build it into the context. Yeah. Quite. Yes. Yeah.
So our second example is one we've actually talked about before, although it was back in, I think, episode 16, so a long time ago now, is Bill Barr's summary of the Mueller report before it was officially released.
Like so long ago, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, remember those heady days of when we thought he would actually get impeached for that and out of office.
So Barr's initial attempt was just to lie about what it said, but not by making up things that Mueller said in his report, but by removing things that Mueller said that made the quote that he said sound better for Trump. So in his summary letter and in his press conference, Barr said this.
As you will see, the special counsel's report states that his, quote, investigation did not establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government in its election interference activities.
So he's quoting there directly from the Mueller report.
Yeah.
And the quote is a true quote. But in his summary letter, we noticed that the at the beginning of that sentence was a small t.
Yeah.
Meaning it wasn't the beginning of a sentence. The full sentence is, although the investigation established that the Russian government perceived it would benefit from a Trump presidency and worked to secure that outcome, and that the campaign expected it would benefit electorally from information stolen and released through Russian efforts, the investigation did not establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government in its election interference activities. So, although we found stuff that looks really bad for Trump...
And they gladly took hold of it, and had conversations that they denied at the top of Trump Tower.
So the campaign, based on that sentence, the campaign clearly knew what was happening and expected to benefit from it and knew it was stolen information. That's, that's the only real way to read that sentence.
Yeah.
Unless you snip off the first half of it and just go with the bit that says they didn't establish that they conspired or coordinated with the Russian government.
They just took the stolen goods rather than actually break into the store and steal them, or hand the guy the brick that broke the window.
Yeah.
So that's fundamentally, but they were in receipt of and benefited from stolen stuff. And who knows, what Russia demanded in return. Maybe $400 million.
Yeah, who knows?
Payable by 2024. Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, we can't say for sure.
No.
So our final example in this
might be out of context,
is actually from the vice presidential debate, which happened just last night as we're recording this. This was a quote from Pence, who was complaining about Obama and Biden's treatment of the swine flu epidemic.
If the swine flu had been as lethal as the coronavirus in 2009, when Joe Biden was vice president, we would have lost 2 million American lives. His own chief of staff, Ron Klain, would say last year that it was pure luck that they did, quote, everything possible wrong. And we learned from that. They left the strategic national stockpile empty. They left an empty and hollow plan, but we still learned from it.
So Klain did say at a biosecurity summit last year that the Biden working party on the swine flu did everything possible wrong. He did use those 3 words in that order.
Yeah.
But it was during a conversation about vaccines, and he was specifically talking about their efforts to produce enough of an H1N1 vaccine to meet public demand.
Yeah.
He didn't mean and didn't say that they did everything possible wrong in their approach to tackling swine flu. And in fact, he has said since that the Obama team quickly adapted to the situation. They made choices that were starkly different from those the Trump administration has made, such as quickly distributing emergency equipment from the federal stockpile, deferring to public health experts and having them take the lead on messaging, which is indeed what they did.
Yep.
In fact, it was declared a pandemic, I think, within a few days of the first case, and immediately stuff was going out from the federal stockpile. Needless to say, Pence is lying about the fact that they left the federal stockpile empty. In fact, there were over 16,000 ventilators available to them, of which they only used 10,000. Yeah, they're still doing it.
Yep.
Obviously, they couldn't leave them a vaccine for a disease that didn't exist at the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was the efforts to get the H1N1 vaccine out to the public and produce enough doses that the administration had trouble with. And in that respect, they were lucky that it wasn't more lethal. Because if it had been more lethal, their failure to deal with the vaccine problem would have meant lots of people would have died.
Yeah, which actually could be levelled at the Trump administration in the wake of COVID-19. That's exactly what's happening.
I mean, in terms of their failure to do stuff, absolutely. The vaccine problem of not being able to get enough vaccines ready and out isn't the Trump administration's problem or fault.
Yeah.
It is their problem in a way, but it's not their fault. Hopefully it won't be their problem because it will be Biden's problem.
Yes, exactly, And who better to oversee that than somebody who oversaw it last time and learned from that mistake? Yeah.
The idea that Pence says at the end there that they learned from Obama and Biden's mistakes is insane.
They learned to use their mistakes against them by taking the quote out of context.
Absolutely. But the stuff they did differently was all bad. It was all, claiming that all of the stuff in the federal stockpile was theirs and not for the states. Making states compete for medical equipment, giving medical equipment like PPE to other countries before giving it to people in the US, just not trusting the science and massively putting out misinformation about miracle cures and all kinds of things that they did differently from Obama, and every single one of them was wrong.
Yeah.
So
in every way. Yeah. So, it's a quote that will come back to bite him. And we will be there to deliver the teeth marks.
And now is the time, I think, for Mark's British politics corner.
Well, we know that Boris has always attempted to appeal to the Tory self-aggrandising right-wing base by showing himself to be learned as they themselves think they are, and actually try to appear more learned than he is, and certainly more so than any of his school teachers have gone on record as saying. And you can mind those quotes to your heart content. So amidst his bluster, he constantly quotes Latin and Greek and Shakespeare and French, franglais, and then in order to kind of bolster the truth of what he's saying. And then when those fail him, he just simply makes up quotes where none exist. He was famously sacked from his job at the Times newspaper over allegations that he fabricated a quote from his own godfather, the historian Colin Lucas, for a front-page article about the discovery of Edward II's Rose Palace. I quote his disingenuous response. The trouble was that somewhere in my copy I managed to attribute to Colin the view that Edward II and Piers Gaveston would have been cavorting together in the Rose Palace when Gaveston was executed 13 years before the palace was built. But most recently, like Theresa May coming on stage like the rickety undead to the tune of ABBA's Dancing Queen, Boris Johnson continues the Tory party tradition of being cringingly and embarrassingly out of step in their attempts to be hip, trendy and other modern phrases and engage the youth of today with references to pop culture past, or, well, I was going to say present, but that would imply that the likes of Priti Patel is aware of contemporary with her second-generation immigration heritage status London punk duo Bob Vylan with their song about racist attitudes, the chorus of which ends like this, and I quote, "We didn't appear out of thin air, we live here." So at the Tory party conference this week, when weirdly telling us that his weight was why he suffered so much with COVID and that he continues on the diet regime that a week of comatose intravenous feeding started, he oddly quoted M People's 1995 song, Search for the Hero Inside Yourself.
And I'm going to continue that diet because you've got to search for the hero inside yourself in the hope that that individual is considerably slimmer.
As if Heather Small, having said it, lends credence to what he is saying. The problem, of course, is being utterly tone-deaf to the nation's woes, the constitutional outrage expressed by the disempowered Parliament in the face of his ruling by special decree, and the protests of anyone alive since 1995 who has actually heard of M People. Boris failed to realise that a song called "We Don't Need Another Hero" exists, or indeed that the same Ms Small also sang a just as well-known song which contains the line, "What have you done today to make you feel proud?" which many commentators mind with the slight tweak, "What have you done today to make us or me feel proud?" So they countered his quote mining by quote mining another quote from the same band, which kind of denies what he was saying. So it's not just about putting it into context. Well, it is, because they put it into context of
yeah,
if
they
you're
used
going to
it.
go. Yeah,
quite appropriately.
If you're going to go quote M People merely to, search for the hero inside yourself, we're going to quote M People because they also said, "What have you done today to make us feel proud?" Which could be equally being said by the Tory party or Parliament, all of bleeding England, the United Kingdom, Europe, the Western Hemisphere, the world. So the ignominy of contextomy, the danger of quote mining, is that it leaves you open to cherry pickers playing you at the same game, but not necessarily in your favour.
It's a really weird decision to use that in that context as well, isn't it? I'm not sure it's necessarily quote mining because it's really. I don't know if it's pretending that Heather Small meant something she didn't mean as such. Yeah. But it's weird as hell that he decided that he's talking about kind of staying on a diet because you have to search for the hero inside yourself. What the fuck has that got to do with it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's just an odd place to use a quote from a song.
Quite. And he does that. That's what the Tories do. Like the bit when he was doing that thing, that dude thing, when he was trying to. There's something about trying to appeal to millennials, Generation X, baby boomers, his contemporaries. I don't know why he's doing it, and something about quoting that which gives some credibility to him continuing the diet, which he didn't choose to do. He got COVID because he was fat, and then COVID made him go slim because he couldn't eat for a week because he was, in a coma, being drip fed. But yeah, a weird thing to do that. He mishandles it, and it doesn't work, and it lays himself open to ridicule, which I'm all for. So all right then. So in the second example, then, in the interest of balance, of course, we need to talk about the Labour Party. So, meanwhile, in Prime Minister's Questions on Wednesday, Keir Starmer asked how 16,000 COVID testing records, all of them positive, were lost for over 2 weeks because they literally fell off the end of a qualified by being a Tory chum / party donor / money launderer Dido Harding and her £20 billion track and trace system, which is actually a 1987 format Excel spreadsheet. Well, beating, but, spreadsheet nonetheless.
Yeah, it's the best of the spreadsheets.
yeah.
But it's no database.
Yeah. No, it's not even an XLSX spreadsheet. It's an XLS spreadsheet, which means it can't handle the number of columns they were shoving in. And you would think, well, with 20 billion quid, surely they could have at least bought a 49-inch curved screen to fit them all in, or an up-to-date version of Excel.
Yeah.
They just use Sheets. Yeah, Google Sheets. There you go. Yeah. That was free. Yeah.
LibreOffice.
Yeah. It's like Microsoft works.
Other spreadsheet programs are available.
Are available, yeah, but don't use them. Not for this application. So in asking this question, Keir Starmer said this.
No wonder it's been described as intergalactic incompetence.
Which, had he still been alive, which wouldn't have stopped Boris, let's face it, Douglas Adams might well have said. It sounds like Keir is quoting this to add some third-party, possibly expert credibility to the phrase, but I can't find who he's quoting. And my suspicions are aroused over the incompetence bit, because that's a very Labour Party and Starmer shtick. That's been their thing. They keep throwing at the government throughout this whole crisis, that the government is incompetent. And if no one said the thing that Starmer is quoting, and Starmer said it, and said it right then it's an accelerated truth inside an appeal to authority, wrapped in a quote mine tucked underneath, and many people have said styled Trumpism. And I suspect that the "it's been described as" reveals that it was written down in a Prime Minister's questions briefing. So it's kind of...
It's like, it's been described. Who said that? Well, I just said it.
Yeah, I just said that. Yeah.
It's been described
people
now.
have said it. Yeah.
It's official.
No, you've just...
It's on Hansard.
Yeah. So, and I think that the problem with quote mining in both those examples is that to carry the weight being given to it and to act as the definitive go-to final word on the matter that exists as a fact, a profound self-evident truth that we all agree on and can't argue against, it's got to be a quote from an accepted apartisan authority, and it also has to be being said about the exact context in which it's being used. Otherwise, it's just a variation on a clever and slightly amusing meme. For people to accept this as the way to describe what's going on, or, the quote that nails what's being said, or
even just evidence for your point of view.
Yeah. Then it's got to be something that we all know exists, and we all see that where it's heading, and it's got to be within the same context. So that we just kind of sit back like chastened schoolchildren. We just go, yeah, no, you're right. Actually, yeah, we should just shut up and pay attention to that. As Einstein once rightly said in a recent TikTok video, you can't believe everything that's been quoted on Twitter. Implied the causal flows from premises. Conclusion arrives logically. Assertion. You've got to search for the fallacy in the wild. Search for the wild fallacies. Search for the fallacy in the wild until you find the wild fallacies. There you go, and people there with you've got to search for the fallacy in the wild.
So in the Fallacy in the Wild, we like to talk about the fallacy of the week from a non-political perspective, and our first example this week comes from a newspaper ad for a film, which was Be Cool.
Right.
I think it was a sequel to Get Shorty.
Oh, okay.
And it was, John Travolta film from 2000s, sometime around that period.
Yeah,
I don't know. And this is a thing, in the UK, we have the Advertising Standards Authority, which makes sure that adverts are kind of truthful, at least to some extent. And people can complain if they find that they've been misled by an advert.
Or something like that.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that is a kind of a barrier to people misquoting people in adverts and stuff like that. It's supposed to not happen, and if it does happen, then people can get fined. They don't have the same kind of thing in the US, as I understand it, at least. And certainly they didn't when this advert was released, because film adverts, they tend to put quotes from reviews on the adverts, but not everyone is very careful to make sure the quote reflects the full review. if I'm being quite generous.
Yeah. So you always put ... something ... And like ... brilliant ... Yeah.
So the top quote on this particular advert for Be Cool is from Kevin Thomas from the LA Times, and it says, "Travolta is as smooth as ever," which is indeed a direct quote from Kevin Thomas's review of Be Cool. But the full context of that quote is, although Travolta is as smooth as ever, the picture is a bust, a grimly unfunny comedy with no connection to reality, and worst of all, running on and on for 2 dismal hours.
Oh, yeah, because you can identify the butt. You kind of actually have to ignore all the stuff up to the butt.
Yeah,
and then the truth happens. Yeah.
And that's particularly damning because Kevin Thomas he loves every film. A filmmaker once said of him that he likes a film so long as it's in focus, and he likes lots of films that aren't.
Yeah.
There is very little that he doesn't like, but he hated Be Cool. And yet they still used his quote as like the top quote on the poster.
Well, isn't there a guy in there's like, it's the same with the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, the Edinburgh Festival Fringe, where people try and get, you can guarantee there are 2 critics. There's one who will just say he loves everything, and one who hates everything. So, and the more fringe comics kind of are determined to get the guy that hates them on their posters, on their flyers, because that guarantees more people to come and see it. Because you kind of go, well, if he hates it, then it must be good. Yeah. Whereas the other guy, you go, oh, well, we don't trust him. He'll just turn up the opening of an envelope. That's yeah.
So our second example is from a libel case that was in the UK by a magazine called Private Eye. And they've been sued for libel hundreds of times. They're satire magazine, very funny, but they do kind of fly close to the wind in terms of saying mean things about people sometimes.
Yeah.
And this was one in the 60s where this was one of their first, in fact, certainly their first loss in court, where they had called a book called Scourge of the Swastika by Lord Russell of Liverpool pornographic. And he sued them. And in the court case, their lawyer read out an extract from the Times Literary Review. He said, "With your permission, my lord, I will read an extract from the Times Literary Review. Lord Russell's works could be said to be pornographic." And the lawyer for Lord Russell said, "Read the rest of the sentence." And Private Eye's lawyer said, "But they are not."
That's great, isn't it? Well, it's another example of the butt. You kind of go up to a butt. That's it. Yeah, I edited a whole bunch of stuff for work about the Libyan constitution. It was the new Libyan constitution that was being made. I edited it in Tunisia because the Libyan team had been exiled to Tunisia, and it was in Arabic. And the one word that I learnt in Arabic was "but," which is "lechen." Because if you could spot that, so basically people being interviewed, politicians, and at the moment that lechen would come up, I would then say to my translator, "So can I cut all the stuff prior to that?" And they were going, "Yeah," that's it, because that, they kind of say, well, "Yes, whilst my learned friend is obviously speaking, blah, 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 but what I think," and then you could just kind of do that. Yes, exactly. Lord Russell's work could be said to be pornographic, but they're not. So good, isn't it? That's properly Python-esque almost, isn't it? Yeah.
And so, the Private Eye lost that case.
That was kind of massive mistake,
I don't know if that was a big bit of evidence. But, they didn't have anything that worked.
It could be said to be pornographic, but they're not. That's so good, isn't it?
Yeah, our final example in this section is from Arrested Development. This is an episode where Job has been doing his Aztec tomb illusion in an old people's home, and a man has gone missing. And a news crew catches up with him to ask him about it.
And the press got hold of Job's story.
Where's Earl Milford? I don't know, all right? I put him in a box. I didn't kill him, all right? And don't edit this for your broadcast so it looks like I'm screaming, "I killed Earl Milford!"
Startling confession. Tonight at 11.
So, obviously, they did edit it in that way.
Yeah.
And, this is just, it's great. It's lovely, a lovely sketch because it cuts from him talking to the news crew directly to the news where he is screaming, "I killed Earl Milford."
Yes, exactly,
And I mean, this is the danger of when you are saying, "Oh, everybody's saying this really bad thing about me," and then like you do an impression of them saying it, and that bit can then be kind of cut and used against you.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's clickbait. That's the lesson the modern equivalent of that is clickbait, isn't it? Where you kind of the headline pops up, even in fairly respected what were broadsheet newspapers that are now online. They compete. When they go low, we go low. So they compete in the same way, and they will put a clickbait bit, and you go, Trump is dying, and then it says, dying to serve another 4 years. That kind of, you click on it, you go, yeah, let's go. And then you've been had. And meanwhile, the advertisers are going, yep, lovely, got another one.
Yeah. So unfortunately, that is the danger of just talking. Is people can use stuff that you've said. They can these days, obviously, especially with either stuff in print, where if people are being conscientious and doing the right thing, they will put ellipses in, or they will put kind of square brackets around bits to say this isn't part of the quote or something like that. Yeah. But where you say a thing that could be clipped out and used against you without any ellipses, even the conscientious ones won't necessarily put it into context.
Yeah.
Before we move on to fake news, it's just time to announce the winner of our kind of brief competition that we announced last time, in the hope that people would donate to Dem causes. And indeed, people have. Thank you very, very much. There's been over $250 donated to Act Blue and to Democratic candidates, which is fantastic. And we did say that we would pick someone out of a hat and send them a book and a T-shirt. So the winner is Janet Yutter.
Not a MAGA hat. It wasn't.
It's not a MAGA hat. MAGA hat, no, or a maggot hat.
Maggot
either.
Hat, yeah. Sorry. Who was the winner?
Janet Yutter is the winner.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, Janet, for your contribution. Do send me your details, your address and your kind of T-shirt size, and we will get those things in the post to you. Thank you very much. We have also made our donation to When We All Vote, which turned out to be the best option. It is actually a part of Act Blue, apparently, but it's a 501c3 part of Act Blue. So because they don't involve themselves directly in political campaigning, it is okay for us to donate to them, so that's good.
Because it's just about getting the vote.
It's about
out.
Getting out the vote, absolutely. It's about getting people registered to vote and getting more people out, which is fantastic. It's what we want to happen. So we've made our contribution to that as well. And, it's a little thing. We're not a huge podcast, but it's something that we thought would be good to do.
Yeah,
so
and
thanks very much for joining in.
Mine, Asda's, Tesco. Every little helps.
So we're gonna play
Fake news, folks. I love the game. It's a great game.
I understand the game as well as anybody.
Yes, it's time for Fake News, the game where I read out 3 Trump quotes, 2 of which are real and 1 I made up, and Mark has to figure out which one is fake news.
Well, as Oprah once said, there's no such thing as failure. Failure is just life trying to move us in another direction. Or, as Pulitzer Prize-winning cartoonist Bill Maudlin said, I feel like a fugitive from the law of averages.
I feel like you're putting more kind of preparation into these bits here. So
I just made that up.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah. It's a
That's
quote.
very good.
Neither of them said either of those things.
Okay.
I just made them up. Yeah.
Excellent. So, these quotes from Trump are from around the time of the first presidential debate. Actually, it wasn't even presidential debate. It was the candidates' debate back in 2016. Back when he was on stage with like 12 other people. And the great thing about Trump is that he's very upset when people are mean to him, and he likes to act it out. And so this is actually all from one rant, which gives plenty of opportunities, if we wanted to take him out of context. and have him saying negative things about himself. Yeah. So statement number 1. I was at Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach, Florida, and they said he was so presidential. Well, when I'm on a debate stage and I have all these people throwing things at me, you've got to fight back. Somebody said, Donald, you're the leader, the prohibitive favourite. Just stand there and take it. I can't do that, right? I can't. They actually said, be presidential. I said, does that mean I can't fight? So when little Marco spews his crap about the size of my hands, which are big. Statement number 2.
Donald Trump said, I can't fight.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Also, the prohibitive favourite, which is an interesting phrase.
Meaningless, made up.
Statement number 2. Those hands
Right.
can hit a golf ball 285 yards. Those are good, strong. I've never been criticised about the size of my hands before. I'm saying to myself, what's going on here? So anyway, I have to. So what do I do? For the rest of my life, I have the curse that I have little hands. Little hands. Take that, guy. So I said to my people, so what do I do? Do I stand back and just take incoming and act presidential? So now Donald Trump is a con man.
Brilliant. Look at that. Donald Trump is a con man. I have little hands. So good, isn't it? And then, we get that one, we just go, what's going on here? A further proof that he's losing his marbles. Yeah.
And statement number 3, Donald Trump is crazy. Donald Trump would be a terrible president. I'm just supposed to take that. I act presidential. I can't do that. Donald Trump is racist. They don't know, so I fought back. But when I say things about little Marco, all of a sudden, Donald Trump is a bully. I'm fighting back. You know how many people would support me if I didn't fight back? Like 7. None of you would do that. I know you would.
Okay, I don't know what the fuck is he saying at the end? You know, anybody like 7? None of you would do that. Do what? Not support B7? What? Donald Trump, that's brilliant. Donald Trump's racist. Donald Trump's a bully. There you go. Donald Trump is crazy. Donald Trump would be a terrible president. You see, maybe those are all clickbait. And I'm just going to go, well, yeah, I'm going to click on that one because that's real for sure. But it could be, and it might be, underneath it will go Jim Cliff 2020. Yeah. I think I've never been criticised about the size of my hands before. Okay. 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 Well, I want him to have said all those things that we can take out of context in number 3. And the little hands thing, I don't know. But see, prohibitive favourite, you might have thrown me a curveball there. All right, well, I'm going to go for it. And, oh, no. Okay, I think number 2 is the one you made up.
Okay. So the other 2, which do you think is more convincing?
Number 1.
Okay.
That sounded convincing, didn't it?
You sound very convinced.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So number 1 is real.
I was at Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach, Florida, and they said, he was so presidential. Well, when I'm on a debate stage and I have all these people throwing things at me, you got to fight back. Somebody said, Donald, you're the leader, the prohibitive favorite. Just stand there and take it. I can't do that, right? I can't do. They actually said, be presidential. I said, does that mean that I can't fight? So when little Marco spews his crap about the size of my hands, which are big.
Bloody hell. You're the prohibitive favourite. And I'll go,
Yeah, what is that?
Do it.
Because it's not... Initially, when I read it, I thought, well, the captioner has obviously misheard what he said. But he very clearly says the prohibitive favourite.
I can't think what he's trying to say.
No. No,
it's not, or even what it might mean.
Presumptive favourite. For that, the presumptive nominee makes sense.
Yeah.
Presumptive favourite makes no sense anyway.
Yeah, or the potential favourite, or
I don't know.
That's just nonsense.
Yeah,
but they loved it. They kind of went, "Yeah, you are. You're the prohibitive favourite. Yeah, you're prohibiting everything. Prohibition favourite. I don't know. Yeah, because he lives in the 30s. Could be.
You also think number 3 is real? And number 3 is fake news.
Oh, man. You see, you threw them all in and I fell for it.
Yeah, I thought I'd load it up with...
Yeah. I'm just a sucker for clickbait.
Yeah.
That's it. Well, I wanted to hear him say them. That really, frankly, that's what I wanted to do.
Well, you do get to hear him say that he has little hands.
Oh, yeah. Oh, good.
Because number 2 is real.
Yeah.
Those hands can hit a golf ball 285 yards, right? Those are good, strong. I've never been criticized about the size of my hands before. I'm saying to myself, what's going on here? So anyway, so what do I do? For the rest of my life, I have the curse that I have little hands. Little hands. Take that guy. So I said to my people, so what do I do? Do I stand back and just take incoming and act presidential? So now I'm Donald Trump is a con man.
Brilliant. Well, we know that. That came readily to his lips, didn't it? That's so good. I have little hands. And he even does his own voice. Little hands. And then holds them up. Obviously, in my mind's eye, he's holding them up, which does nothing to disprove the fact.
He holds them up, especially when he's boasting about how those hands can hit a golf ball 285 yards, which I don't know how he plays golf, but he's doing it wrong.
You want, yeah, if it's just your hands, how can you do it with just your hands? You can't. That would hurt your wrists, wouldn't it?
They're minimal involvement in.
They're just kind of they're just holding the thing, aren't they?
Yeah.
The rest of it, if you're doing it right, from all of my studying of Tony Jacklin all these years, or Tiger Woods, you have to put your back into it, kind of thing. You're doing it wrong, man. No wonder you're so fat. You're just using your hands. You're not even walking. You're getting in a cart to go to the next bit. Yeah.
Yeah, and the idea that he's never been criticised about the size of his hands before. I mean, that's why Marco brought it up. Because it's a big thing for him. It's a thing that he's really pissed off that a journalist once called him a short-fingered vulgarian. And he spent the next 20 years circling his hands in magazines, ripping the pages out and sending them to the journalist to say, see, not small.
Yeah, never been criticised before, no. So even that, he's taken himself out of context there. They're tiny accordion playing hands.
It doesn't, at this point, it hasn't, for years it hasn't mattered whether his hands are small or not. The funny thing is that he cares.
Yeah.
So that's why Marco said it. That's why people keep bringing it up.
Yeah.
Because it annoys him.
Because it is lovely just to needle him a bit. You go, tiny, stubby-fingered Bulgarian.
Yeah, which sadly means that you did not win this week.
Oh, yeah.
So I think you were on a bit of a roll, but now that's...
I was.
So, that's 26 out of 60, which is
I could have been 30 out of
43%.
60. Look at that. I could have been... Oh, no.
No, you could have been 27 out of 60.
I misread the 29 as a 6 as a 9.
Yeah.
I'm looking at my screen upside down. That's what it is. Yeah.
Stop doing that,
Yeah.
So you're on 43%.
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah. It's still better than chance. So you're still, some way off
on the
50%,
run from
but
the
you never
law
know.
of averages. Yeah.
If Trump gets another 4 years, who knows?
Who knows? I could.
You could make it all the way to 50%.
Yeah, all the way down to 3 again. Yeah. I was watching the other day The Social Dilemma. I don't know whether you've seen that, but it's kind of fundamentally a thesis about the evils of social media, with interviews of various CEOs of big tech companies talking about that. But when I watched it, it occurred to me that actually there's a lot of fallacies going on here. And of course, and of course, I couldn't enumerate them fast enough for the people in the room to actually keep up with me or be convinced by what I was saying. So it occurred to me that actually Jim would love this. So I sent him a note and said, you should watch this because I think it's possibly a bit fallacious, judging by the reaction of the people in the room who I'm watching it with, who have a lot of cognitive bias towards what they're saying. I think it's relying a lot on that. And then it occurred to me that actually what we could do is a bit of a special. So I thought that actually what we could do is we could announce that on this show because it would be a patron-only bonus thing. So if you like listening to that on that, then you could join the serried ranks of our patrons and go to patreon.com, sign up to our show and get to hear all sorts of other bonus material. There's the entirety of Fear Trump in the White House already in our library. We are hacking our way through QAnon, an invitation to the Great Awakening, which is, quite something to witness. There's also the special where we did go through so that you don't have watching Ghosts Can't Do It. The Trump vehicle. It's not a Trump vehicle. It's a Bo Derek vehicle.
Trump is in it for about 3 minutes, but it's 3 minutes
why it hasn't disappeared.
Can't miss.
Much like Bo Derek's nudity, Donald Trump is essential to the plot.
So we'll be doing a special on Social Dilemma, which is on Netflix if you want to watch it yourself, before the next episode of Fallacious Trump. So that's why we wanted to tell you on this one. There will still be a QAnon episode this week, so this is extra stuff for patrons. So if you'd like to join us for that, you could watch it first. You could watch it along, but it probably won't match up with what we're talking about. So don't do that. That'll be a waste of time. But go to patreon.com/ftrump and join up. It's time for the part of the episode that this week at least is called Trump's COVID diagnosis is not a logical fallacy. Because kind of we thought it might be at first. And that's the bad thing about being the boy who cried wolf, is that when you say, I've got a potentially deadly virus, everyone goes, psh, right.
You just had a terrible debate. We know you're losing control of the news cycle. So,
But I've seen Ghost Can't Do It, and he's not a good enough actor to be gasping for breath in the way he was when we saw him back at the White House. So I believe that he has indeed, he still has. I was going to say has had it, but he's still got it because it was only last week.
Exactly. And he's still when he went back to the White House, he still had like 7 days to go before if you're self-isolating, the CDC ruling is 7 days, isn't it?
Yeah, apparently self-isolating doesn't kind of apply to Trump at all.
No. Because
it's kind of try and touch the most people you can in a way. It seems to be his method.
Super spreader, typhoid Donald.
It seems likely that either he was infected at the kind of outdoor maskless garden party they had for Amy Coney Barrett, or he was infected by someone who was infected there, because at last count, which was yesterday, so it's probably more now, 34 White House staffers or people in contact with those have been diagnosed or have had positive coronavirus tests.
And are they all from that?
A lot
the Rose Garden thing?
A lot of them were in that event. From the stuff that was from videos of that event, we can see, for example, Senator Mike Lee, who has been positively tested, was going around hugging people, and everyone was like shaking hands and kissing and stuff, and it was just like deliberate passing on of coronavirus in a way that would be a felony if it was TB or something like that. And so Tom Tillis, Mike Lee, Stephen Miller, Hope Hicks, Trump himself, Melania, Kayleigh McEnany, and many others have come down with coronavirus.
Kellyanne Conway as well.
Yeah.
Mind you, how could you tell? Because she looks like death warmed up anyway.
So that was a kind of super spreader event, it seems. I think actually in terms of kind of new cases per day, that event was probably responsible for about half of all of the new cases in DC on one of the days last week. So it's pretty amazing, really.
That's brilliant.
And so we don't actually know if Trump was infected, was contagious, or anything when he went to the debate with Biden, because, first of all, the White House won't tell us. No matter how many times reporters ask, when was President Trump's last negative test, they won't say. And he turned up too late to the debate to be tested before they went on stage. So we don't know. So it is possible that he was already infectious at that point.
There was a brilliant post from a QAnoner that I read today, which was posted just that. It says, I'm going to say what we're all thinking. well, we're not all thinking it. Trump was fine until the debate where they set up the microphones and podiums for him. Incubation period is 2 to 3 days. He tests positive a couple of days after the debate. I put nothing past the left. Nothing. Yeah. So what they did was just get somebody to sneeze all over everything and then stand him in front of it, knowing that, up till then he's completely free of everything and wasn't doing anything slightly dodgy vis-a-vis spreading viruses or even wearing a mask.
The first bit of information we had was that Hope Hicks had tested positive on Wednesday, and it was from then on that the kind of dominoes started to fall, essentially, because she had been on Air Force One with Trump and with Melania. And it was, I think, Thursday evening that Trump announced that he and Melania had both tested positive. Then he went to Walter Reed on the Friday. He was helicoptered from the White House to Walter Reed.
Just like an ordinary American.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Where he was given treatment by some of the best doctors in the country and given some treatments that Americans don't have access to, basically. Some things that the people do have access to. He was given remdesivir, which is fairly common treatment that's given. He was also given Regeneron monoclonal antibodies, which is an experimental treatment that is currently in clinical trials, and only less than 10 people outside of the clinical trials in the US have had access to that.
Wow. Is that the stem cell derived stuff? So from stem cells from fetal
matter.
The
kind of thing that Republicans tend to try and stop from happening. That kind of thing. Yeah.
And that QAnoners are accusing the cabal of perpetuating for their own ends. Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
So Trump
that's going to require some gymnastics, isn't it, on the part of that conspiracy theory? Yeah.
Also, Sean Conley, the physician to the president, said initially that he was basically doing very well. He hadn't had any additional oxygen. Then a couple of days later, he said, well, actually, yes, he had additional oxygen. His oxygen sats had dropped to 94% on Friday, and they had given him extra oxygen before he went to Walter Reed. And when he was asked why he had basically lied and said that he hadn't, Conley said that he didn't want to give any information that would change the course of the illness.
Because keeping stuff secret from the illness...
If the illness doesn't know that he's had extra oxygen, it won't work.
It won't.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say he was quoted out of context, but no.
No, he just lied. He lied, and then he said, "Here's why I lied."
I didn't want to say it in case the virus heard and realised it was doing damage and would keep going. Because if he realised he was, dealing with an invulnerable immortal, it would just give up and leave. Yeah. Okay, because that's how viruses work. They've got ears. Yeah.
So there's various photo ops at Walter Reed where Trump pretended he was doing work, but he was clearly signing his name on a blank piece of paper.
Yeah. And I wanted somebody to take one of those bits of paper and say, I hereby resign the office of the President of the United States due to being ill with COVID. And there it is signed, and you just take it away. Or, I promise to pay the bearer on demand the sum of $400 million in rubles, maybe Russia. Yeah.
And, so some of the photo ops that he had were set up to look like they'd been done at completely different times. He was wearing a jacket in one and not in the other, and they were in different areas of a workstation.
The clock behind
they checked the data on the photos, and it was actually they were taken 10 minutes apart. So it was clearly that they had set it up to make it look like he was doing work at Walter Reed. And we know he doesn't do work when he's in the fucking Oval Office.
Oh, exactly.
So why he would be getting on with work when he's at the hospital, I don't know.
Yeah.
But
maybe
he wanted to present that he was fine. You didn't need to worry about it. He's all right. He was getting on with stuff.
Over a long period of time.
All right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Then the doctors announced that he had been given dexamethasone, which is a fairly strong corticosteroid, which is usually reserved for people who are kind of further. They have more symptoms. It's not just kind of shortness of breath or anything like that.
Yeah.
So maybe they were just like they're giving him everything they could, or maybe it was a bit worse than they said it was. It's not clear. But one thing about the dexamethasone is it makes you feel invincible. It makes you feel like you're like really kind of completely strong and fine again, even though you're not and you're still ill.
Yeah.
So when he then did like tweets saying I feel better than I did 20 years ago, and did videos saying I feel great, I feel fantastic. It's because he's on steroids.
You're on
That's
massive
why.
steroids. Yeah.
And he went for a quick tour around the outside of the hospital in his SUV, sealed in a box with some Secret Service people.
Some poor saps.
That isn't how they're supposed to risk their life for the president.
Yeah. Who've now have they tested positive, or have they kind of disappeared from view?
Imagine they've got to be isolated, but I don't know. We haven't heard. But Dr. James Phillips, who's an attending physician at Walter Reed, also chief of disaster medicine at George Washington University, he called it political theatre. He said the presidential SUV is not only bulletproof but hermetically sealed against chemical attack. The risk of COVID-19 transmission inside is as high as it gets outside of medical procedures. The irresponsibility is astounding.
Wow.
So.
Yeah, because that's going to be much, much higher than, 6 people in the Weatherspoons, talking over a beer. It's going to, oh my God, yeah.
It's not.
If it's hermetically sealed, there is no movement of air.
His supporters.
Yeah, and look like he was still alive.
Yeah.
And
then he was either released or left against medical advice. I don't know. Depends what his doctors were telling him. But he left and headed back to the White House in Marine One.
Yep.
Before he left Walter Reed, actually, he did do another video saying that he'd learned a lot about COVID. He'd learned it. He said, I learned it by really going to school. This is the real school. This isn't the let's read the books school. And I get it and I understand it. And it's a very interesting thing. And I'm going to be letting you know about it.
Let me just stop you there. A real school is where they do
they do read the books in a real school.
That's how you know it's a real school. Yeah. Because that's what, if somebody said, what did you do at school today? Oh, yeah, we read a book. If you were to draw a picture of a school, or look on Getty Images for kids at school, they'd be sitting at a desk with books with their hands up and the teacher kind of pointing at stuff. Yeah. What kind of school is the School of Hard Knocks, isn't it?
Wouldn't it be awesome if the president of a country where 7.5 million people have had this disease and 210,000 have died from it had already learned that stuff?
Yeah.
Like in
just
the first,
from the
8 months.
From the numbers, just from the fact that 210,000 people have died from it. That's all you need to know right there, really.
Because he's just the biggest fucking narcissist in the world. Until it happens to him, he doesn't learn anything about it.
Quite.
It's not worth
that was the whole of the Boris experience. We've had it in the UK. You think, we've had exactly the same thing. Bumbling overweight oaf with weird hair who gets COVID, and then we think, oh right, finally. So, and then for like a week there was sort of humility and staring down the face of death and realising what all these people have gone through, not least the medical services that had helped you through it, many of whose compatriots had died in the first wave. Only like a week later, should we give them a pay rise? No, fuck that. Let's get out and clap them, and at the same time charge them for parking and charge any foreign ones. The 2 foreign people that Boris was very careful to describe and name, let's charge them for studying medicine in the UK. It's a familiar narcissistic thing.
Good luck getting a week of humility out of Trump, or a moment of humility at all.
Yeah, how long was it before? Between I've learned a lot. I'm going to. And then.
Well, it was less than a full day between that and tweeting that the flu is just as bad, basically.
Yeah.
And you don't need to worry about COVID. It's fine.
Stop your mithering. He's basically
because he is essentially 4 days after being diagnosed, he's cured now. He reckons.
Not only he's immune. You could use my blood.
Yeah, because we have the best doctors in the world. Therefore, all Americans are going to be fine. It's not a problem anymore.
And all of these things have been developed under my administration.
Yeah, which,
but not
again,
because of your administration.
But they haven't even. The Regeneron,
No.
Regeneron, yes, have been developing it since the virus came along.
Well, yeah, it's a response to the virus.
But all the other medicines he's had, apart from that one thing that other Americans can't have, have not. They already existed.
Yeah.
He's got it free, and he didn't even pay the fucking taxes to contribute to the system that pays it for him.
Pay for that. Exactly. Yes. $750, not going to get you much. Maybe a prescription for painkiller. That's it.
Yeah.
And a cab ride to the office. Yeah.
So he headed back to the White House and walked up the steps and immediately took off his mask because fuck everyone who works at the White House.
Yeah.
And stood there on the balcony, just wheezing.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had asthma all my life. I know what it is to not be able to breathe properly.
Yeah.
And I could see it. He is struggling. He is gasping for breath. He's not okay, and he shouldn't be out of hospital. Yeah. And according to Larry Kudlow, the next day he was back down in the Oval Office. I don't know whether to believe that, and the White House have denied it, but they've said that he wanted to be. But whether he is just around the residence or wandering around the West Wing, he's infecting, and he is risking all of those people.
And so are people disappearing and like not turning up for work or going down, dropping like flies?
Well, as I said, as of yesterday, it was more than 34 people. Wow. I don't know what the total is now, but I mean, it's going to be more.
Yeah,
because
and the CDC recently announced that it is airborne. It's not just.
I mean, the thing is, they did that a few weeks ago and then immediately took it back off their website and claimed that was a mistake. But they've put it back on there now and said yes, it is airborne and potentially more than 6 feet away.
Well, even if he's just breathing.
Yeah,
and moving around the building.
He shouldn't be back
without a mask.
I mean,
no.
I haven't been able to track down the original, but I've seen lots of reports that the hospital records put his weight at over 300 pounds.
Wow.
Which isn't surprising at all, not even slightly. If they said he was 239 or whatever his previous doctor claimed he was, that would be surprising.
Yeah.
But Ronnie Jackson sent out a tweet initially when he was first diagnosed to say that the president has no comorbidities, which isn't either how you say that or true.
Yeah.
His comorbidities include being 74 and being obese.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in his age group with his weight class, the odds of survival are still 90%, but that's 10% of people who die. That's pretty bad.
Yep.
Obviously, he is getting the best care in the world, but he's not in any way attempting to keep himself isolated, it seems.
No. I mean, he's in the group that in this country that was the shielding group. So they were the ones that all the scandal that people like him were sent home in the state that he was sent home, only to infect entire nursing homes, entire elderly housing complexes. They were sent home in that state and contributed to the massive wipeout of old people's homes. There is, it's just, and yet he's learned a lot from COVID. He's, from having it, he's learned that don't let it dominate your life. And you kind of think, well, you can talk because, and no other leader wouldn't do what I've just done. Lots of other leaders
COVID
did.
For you. Like,
yeah. I took one for the team.
Weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean the right wing, obviously, as soon as he was diagnosed, to be honest, although he is the worst person ever, there's several reasons I don't wish he had died, or still don't wish he dies from it.
Two of them are Mike and Pence.
is I want him to be prosecuted for most of the stuff he's done. And that doesn't happen if he dies.
Yeah,
so
true.
That would be a shame. But I also just don't agree with kind of wishing death on people. I think that's generally bad. But obviously some left-wing people even did do that. But mostly were saying that, oh, good, he's got it, rather than... oh, what a shame.
Yeah.
And apparently I think 40% of Democrats were happy that he'd got it. And again, that doesn't mean that 40% wanted him to die. It just means, yes, good, poetic justice. He's been saying this shit about it. He's been endangering people's lives. Now that it's affected him, that's the only thing that might make a difference. That's the only,
it might give him an insight into what's been going on, and he might be, he might be a bit more magnanimous.
And the hilarious thing is people like Charlie Kirk and other right-wing voices, basically having been attacking people on the left for 4 years now at least, suddenly saying, "Oh, you're being so mean." Why aren't you kind of hoping for the best for our president? How can you be so mean, you bastards?
Yeah. Having been mean, for every day up till that point, Oh, yeah.
It's bizarre.
And finally, some things we really don't have time to talk about.
I know this seems like a million years ago now, but we kind of have to talk about Trump's taxes. The story broke hours after we finished recording our last episode, which means the fact that Trump paid less federal income tax in 2016 and 2017 than the average podcaster is somehow not in the news cycle anymore because 2020. Honestly, when I pick the headlines today before we record, there's a 50-50 chance 12 more important or upsetting things will have happened by the time we do this. Anyway, as everyone knows by now, the New York Times got hold of Trump's taxes and showed that he paid $750 in tax in both 2016 and 2017 and zero in 10 of the 15 previous years. His supporters desperately tried to ignore this while pointing out that the documents didn't reveal any links between Trump and Russia, but quickly ran away when anyone mentioned the fact that Trump is over $400 million in debt and we don't know who he owes. Maybe Russia.
Maybe.
Well, while we're all reeling from the news that Trump's businesses aren't as successful as he claims they are, at least we know why he's fighting so hard to stay in a job he clearly hates. He can't afford to move out of government housing.
Well, we awaited the great debate in great anticipation as the Guardian newspaper reported an aged white male was pitted against an aged orange male. Not since the tall and tanned and young and lovely JFK from Ipanema was up against the pained and pallid damp-faced Nixon has such badinage and repartee been promised. Yeah, right, said no one ever. Still, with COVID rules in place, at least we wouldn't have to suffer a repeat of Trump prowling around the back of Hillary, but it did mean we were deprived the pleasure of Biden walking over and punching Trump square in the face hole as we ordered our Shut Up Man T-shirts that appeared on the Democrats' campaign site. Immediately, Joe had said it. And Joe had to say it because Chris Wallace was so caught rabbit-like in the orange headlights of Trump's incessant excrescence interrupters that he could neither work the rules nor the mic off switch. And when the obituary of America is written, the first lines will contain the immortal pronouncements of POTUS 45 gleaned from this lofty interplay of two giants of the philosopher kingdom in discussing how best to cradle and nurture everyone in their care. Ask not what Trump will do for himself in spite of America, but rather what can America continue to do for Trump and still be blamed for it not being enough. Yeah, I'm not that, but what are you? Why are you pointing my way? He did it more than me. Mr. President, please, Mr. President, the rules. Stand by, I'm proud of you, my very fine supremacist boys. And it will end with Dana Bash from CNN uttering the self-evident and universal truth that we all hold dear, that this truly was our finest shit show. Oh, to have been a fly on the wall at the Veeps debate, hey?
Yes, the VP debate. Well, it was okay. I mean, it was 1,000 times better than the presidential shit show in that people actually, debated a bit. But you can gauge the level of excitement from the fact that a fly that sat on Pence's head for over 2 minutes was by far the most talked about aspect. Obviously, Kamala won, with a particularly strong answer on the economy being a highlight, and several opportunities to shut Pence up like a schoolteacher waiting for quiet. Both candidates avoided some questions, but Pence made it a personal mission not to answer the question he was asked, at one point choosing instead to ask Kamala a question and then complain that she hadn't answered it. He answered several questions by claiming that Biden would raise everyone's taxes, and none of those questions were about the economy. Basically, he showed what Trump's lies would look like if they were delivered in a calm, almost comatose manner, instead of by a frothing maniac. The debates continue next week, or do they? The Commission on Presidential Debates has announced that the next debate will be virtual due to Trump still being infected with a deadly contagious virus. But, as of this recording, Trump says he won't take part if it's virtual, presumably because trying to get Biden infected is his only real hope at this point.
Given the fact that he dials into bloody Fox News constantly, it's not like he's not at ease with talking virtually to people who are not listening to him. Yeah. The other thing I really liked is that the Biden campaign put out a fly swat almost immediately as well.
Yeah, they got a lot of donations from that.
So good. Just when you thought there was no inkling of any glimmer of light, hope or exhilaration emanating from the crack of the arse end of 2020, let joy be unconfined. Our comedy evil villains, Jacob Wall and Jack Berkman, have handed themselves in. The sweetest sounding three little words you'll ever hear exchanged between two people, handed themselves in. Yep, the exciting chapter in the lives of the super chumps. We brought you the episode before last where they said they had nothing to do with the intimidating robocalls to black and minority voters has caught up with them. They're charged with a count of election law, intimidating voters, 5-year felony, a count of conspiracy to commit an election law violation, 5-year felony, a count of using a computer to commit the crime of election law, intimidating voters, a 7-year felony, and using a computer to commit the crime of conspiracy, 7-year felony. Disappointingly, they'll only officially have to face a maximum of 12 years in jail. But excitingly, there is room for judges' discretion. And if the judge is as discreet as they have been, they ain't never getting out.
There's a lot of misinformation out there about the coronavirus, and researchers at Columbia University decided to look into where all this bad information is coming from. You're not going to believe this, but having analysed 38 million articles about the virus, they discovered the single biggest driver of misinformation about COVID is a Mr. Donald J. Trump of Pennsylvania Avenue, Washington, D.C. Of the 38 million articles, 1.1 million contain misinformation, with 46% of those containing conspiracy theories and 27% involving miracle cures. Trump was invoked in almost 40% of all the untrue stuff. Finally, Trump can legitimately claim he is the best in the world at something.
That's amazing, isn't it? So good. COVID has wrought many problems on ordinary American citizens. But it's not been an even-handed thing. In Trump's America, to quote mine Nina Simone, "Them's that got shall get, them's that not shall lose." Though admittedly she got it from Matthew 13:12, which is where non-profit organisation Farmers to Families has stepped in with their food box programme, providing produce for free for those most in need. Ironic, given that because of Trump and his big brain when it comes to trade and tariffs, most of the farmers in America are approaching the breadline themselves. Ever mindful of his non-fulfilment of his duties to aid and assist anyone in the nation except himself, Trump has asked that each box includes a letter from him, big Sharpie signature and all, apologising for his willful negligence and unforgivable misdeed in that regard, which he goes on to humbly accept borders on the criminal, if not appearing at the Hague-style genocidal behaviour. No, of course not. There is a letter mandated to be included in each box which usurps all the charitable altruism of Chief Executive Carlos Nelson, and it claims as Trump's own, not the congressional governments, not the federal authorities, not local supporters, Trump his own self. And in Spanish too. Presumably to ingratiate himself with the Hispanic voters he's so crudely disenfranchised for the last 4 years. An echo of his putting his signature on the support checks sent out under the Congressional Cross-Party COVID Support Scheme, it puts me in mind of Yossarian in Catch-22, reaching for the painkillers to help ease the poor kid who's on the edge of death, having been shot down in Vietnam, only to find a paper bond certificate from Milo the war profiteer. Thankfully, as Carlos Nelson points out, his organisation has a highly efficient litter collection and recycling team at the distribution events, and now also a solution to the toilet paper shortage.
In yet more news you wouldn't see if Trump's America was a functioning democracy, Georgetown University have produced a series of fact sheets to let you know what to do if you see armed militia intimidating voters at your polling place. You know, like Trump urged his supporters to do during the debate, just after he failed to condemn white supremacists. Since this is fucking unbelievably necessary information right now, we'll have a link in the show notes so that you can download the fact sheet for your state. Can we just stop this now and go back to normality? Please vote so that can happen.
Vote. Meanwhile, in the 51st state, the Tory party conference was conducted online, which meant Boris was where he likes to be most. Nowhere fucking near ordinary people with their pesky questions and demand for accountability, equality, or indeed quality. Artless cultural philistine of the Exchequer, Rishi Sunak, told us that all the members of the highest grossing income sector in the United Kingdom who could no longer work because opera houses, theatres, music venues are still off limits as a result of the government not being able to operate Lotus 123, a world-beating track and trade system, should retrain and get new jobs. Just like they lobbied relentlessly for the then Labour Chancellor to tell those freeloading bankers to all get new jobs after the crash of 2008. Increasingly vampiric Home Secretary Priti Patel is advocating that asylum seekers should be processed in the Ascension Islands, not because that's where Transylvania now is, but because presumably small French-sourced inflatable dinghies won't make it that far, or that refugees fleeing mainly UK-supplied armed conflicts will be delighted to be able to get the BBC World Service there, broadcasting new episodes of Spitting Image, where Boris continuously threatens to sack Dominic Cummings sotto voce, only to be threatened in return by Dom from the planet Gork, asking, "Can you eat babies?" In the 80s, it was a light-hearted comedy. Now it's a hard-hitting documentary. Meanwhile, on the left, well, nothing. New middle ground, middle manager, mid-grey Keir Starmer would welcome a bit of distance from the unions after the leader of the organisation representing the largest proportion of the UK's workforce says it will cut funding donations to the Labour Party as they feel it is no longer representative of the needs of its membership. Welcome aboard, Len McCluskey. So does the majority of the membership of the Labour Party itself. We're all off to join the Social Dilemma's extreme centre party.
So that's all the bad arguments and faulty reasoning we have time for this episode. You can find the show notes at fallacioustrump.com, and if you hear Trump say something stupid and want to ask if it's a fallacy, our contact details are on the contact page.
If you think we've used a fallacy ourselves, let us know. And if you've had a good time, please give us a review on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. And you can support the show at patreon.com/ftrump, just like our strawman level patrons, Schmutz, Mark Reiki and Amber R. Buchanan, and our true Scotsman level top patron, Lauren.
You can connect with those awesome people as well as us and other listeners in the Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/fallacioustrump.
All music is by The Outbursts and was used with permission. So until next time on Fallacious Trump, we'll leave the last gasping word to the Donald.
That's right, go home to mommy. Bye. Bye!
The logical fallacy we're looking at this week is contextomy. Contextomy. Yeah, is it contextomy or context?
I think it's contextomy, like a appendectomy.
Right.
I think that's...
Yeah, not mani. I keep reading too many manis.
As well as anybody.
Yes, it's time for fake news. The game already out. No, I'll try that again. I was too excited about it.